Welcome again to another fantastic episode of the Tooth Sleuth podcast. I couldn't be more excited. We literally have a party going on up in here for this episode. I have Allison Norris and her entire team on the Tooth Sleuth podcast. And some of you may remember Allison Norris. She's a return guest, but this time she's brought her entire team with her. And why, you may ask? Well, because this isn't just the Allison Norris with the CEO of the Dentele Group, but she also brought her entire team because they have something really exciting to share with us today. And rather than me talking about how she met Ashley and Ashley as a practicing endodontist and what she was looking to do, and about Ranjith, who's with a recruiting group, and about Jarrett with Omnihire and developing an app. See, I could talk to you all about that, but I'd rather let Allison tell her story and talk about how she met all these wonderful people and how they all became a part of what they're doing. So I'm going to do that. So everybody, please welcome back to the show none other than the Allison Norris. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me be here.
Who are all your friends that you brought with you? I'll let you introduce in whatever order you like, and then I want to hear their stories because I know your story. You can't tell your story anymore. My whole listening audience knows your story. So who'd you bring with you today?
Sure. So I have my two co-founders of this new app that we're developing, and then I have my developer on here. So Ranjith is from Sweden, and he's one of my co-founders. I have Ashley, who's a practicing endodontist, and then Jared. And I pretty much met Ashley. So Ashley had reached out, and so I saw an opportunity to place some associate dentist, and I thought, who better to talk to these dentists than a practicing endodontist? So that kind of happened there, and then Ranjith and I were talking because I think it was about angel investing or something. So we found each other in a recruiting group, and anyway, and then Jared, I don't know, we found him like on the side of the road somewhere. I can't remember where. No, I'm just kidding. No, no, no. Jared was introduced to us through Ashley's brother, and so yeah, here we are.
That's fantastic. I'm loving all of this. I'm loving all of this. Well, I'm going to start with Dr. Ashley. Can I call you Ashley, or do I need to call you Dr. Ashley? Do you still identify as a doctor, or is that do you play one on TV still?
That's only on good days.
Yeah,
only on the good
days.
That.
They call me. They're like the Dr. Essenmacher. I always love when I get the emails and they're like, Dr. Essenmacher, would you like a list of 20,000 da 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 da? And I'm like, obviously you have no idea who I am. I am not a doctor. Thank you. So I always find that kind of funny. So Ashley, so tell me your story. So you found Allison somehow, and you were placing some associates using the Dentele Group, which, by the way, love them as a recruiting company. Love, love, love. And I had heard, like, we were talking, Allison and I were talking a few months ago, maybe it was more than a few months ago. Time really slips my mind at times. But we were talking about that. So tell me how you met Allison, how you learned about Allison and your experience with her, and then how you ended up becoming a co-founder of this app with her.
Yeah, so I had reached out to Allison probably about a year ago, kind of looking for a way to decrease my clinical time, just kind of for the time being. And Allison gave me the pleasure of working with her with the Dentele Group. And she was kind of teaching me the ropes of recruiting, which I have zero background in. I know the other side very, very well, of course, of clinical dentistry. And so as I started working with Allison, trying to place some associate dentists, I realized very quickly that the recruiting space is very complicated, and there's a plethora of software systems. And I couldn't even keep track of them all. I kept asking her, like, okay, where do I find this and who's there? And it was just crazy. And so one day I just asked her, why isn't there an app for this? And so after we kind of joked about it, we were like, wait a minute, there isn't one, and we can do it. And so we literally just decided to run with the idea. And it started as something a little more simple, and it kind of evolved as we met Ranjith. and got Jared on board, it kind of evolved into this really awesome application. And so kind of using my clinical side of things and Allison and Ranjith's recruiting side of things, that's kind of how we welded together in order to create what we have now.
I love it. And so often I speak with a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, and they come from the clinical side and they just are looking for more, other than, not that like they hated what they were doing. Well, some, I mean, we could talk about a few individuals who talk about that, right? A former podcast guest, Allison, I think, is it Laura Brenner, right? Who talked about that in her great blog of like, answering the 10 reasons why I hate going to the dentist, and her response of 10 reasons why the dentist probably hates you too. And that launched her career. And I just love her for that. And, but those that are in clinical that want to transition out or are looking for something more, or entrepreneurial in spirit, or those like myself that were in the manufacturing side that have that entrepreneurial bug and, launch out on their own. So I love hearing that. And so, but what I also heard from you is, we really have the men to blame on this call. And so let's start with Ranjith, because it sounds like he's really the one who was more of the troublemaker in the group, who then like had this, we'll call it the quote, inspiration to really take it from something simple and complicate it, because isn't really that what men do? Isn't that what we do? We take something super simple and we complement it. All right, you complicated it. So let's hear about what you did to mess things up, Ranjith.
I just wanted to add one thing. We complicate things, but complicated things to complicate our lives.
Right. That sounded like justification, but okay, we'll go with it. All right, so now let's talk about how you got brought into the picture.
No, as Allison said, we found each other on some forum where Allison was looking for some information about the angel investment groups and how to reach. Someone reached out to Allison about something, so I just like, okay, I've been investing. I just started investing a couple of months ago when I met Allison. So I said like, okay, I've been following this industry. I'm an entrepreneur on the side. Don't ask me, like I failed in 3 companies and succeeded in 2. So as you said, like it's an entrepreneur bug that doesn't leave. But again, in that forum, I met Allison and we ended up talking about little about angel investment, but more about how the dental industry recruitment is working. And she showed me one interesting thing, like she was paying around $700 for a database of 1,000 candidates. That was, for me, that was bananas, because I come from a tech industry, and usually you pay like $500 for the whole LinkedIn access, and that's more than 3 million profiles, right? So then we restarted each other again, and we found out that there is a huge gap. And then Allison introduced me to Ashley, and we started there, basically.
I so appreciate the honesty of what you just shared there, because guests of mine on the Two Sleuth podcast and those that I talk to, it's so much about vulnerability and authenticity. And the fact that you were willing to share that in 5 companies that you've started, right, that you've been a part of, 3 failed and 2 were successful. Is that what I heard from you? Yeah, I love that, because it's so encouraging for individuals to say, you know what, just try it. It's not so much that it's a success or a failure necessarily, but what did you learn from it? And go out and build something else, and go out and build something else. I mean, that is really like, well, at least, the American spirit. And I know you're from Sweden, but that really is the ingenuity of what drives humans, right? And human behavior of just try, just do something. Like if you have passion behind it, you can learn from it and you can build and grow from it. I love hearing about that. All right. Well, Jared, I guess you were found on the side of the road somewhere. I'm just curious, like, was it a freeway? Were you in a bassinet, or were you like fully grown at that point? So how did you come into the picture?
Yeah. So basically, I started programming when I was really young. And when I was 14, I started a YouTube channel where I taught people how to program using iOS development. And it happens that Casey was one of the people that watched one of those videos of mine. And so he contacted me directly, and he's like, hey, we've got this awesome project. We would love to bring you on board and have you work on the application. Funnily enough, I was in Thailand at the time, so it was kind of on the side of the road, just like randomly somewhere in the middle of the earth, but from there, we just kind of got started working on the application and working from there.
Love it. So side of the road in Thailand, and you're scooped up. And tell me who Casey is. So it's the brother of someone.
It's Ashley's brother.
Ashley's brother. Okay, good. So it is a family affair. I love it. And for those of you, so on my recording platform, it kind of looks like the Brady Bunch, but I'm not in the middle. So I'm not Alice, just so you know. And Allison, you should be in the middle, because then you'd be Alice, and then it'd be the boys and the girls. Anyway, so I know, just being a little crazy here with all of it. Well, so, okay, now tell me about, so we're talking about recruiting. We heard about bananas, about what it was like with the $700 for 1,000 candidates in the field that you come from, Ranjith. So thank you for sharing that. I'm learning tons new, and how there's a better way to do it. And so there's the development of an app. So talk to my listening audience about that. What was the evolution of this? It went from simple to complicated, or complex? I'm complicated, so that's why I use that word. So talk to me about this evolution of the app. Let's talk about that journey a little bit, and then we'll get to the end result and what users can do with this app.
Now, and again, it's important that we compare how the dental industry recruitment is working. And all I hear from Allison and Ashley, again, I don't have the first-hand experience working with dental recruitment, but I relied on Ashley's and Allison's expertise here. And they have been in the industry for a while. At least Allison has been in the industry for a while, and Ashley firsthand, she has experienced the pain, right? So again, if you compare that to where I come from, the tech industry, and Jared can also chip in whenever you want, but it's important that finding a job should not be as complicated as it should be today. And that's what we wanted to change. And at the same time, again, people coming from dental industry, they don't want to mess up with any systems. Their core business is something else. And tech is something that which has to provide service to them. Rather, it's the opposite these days. Finding a candidate, to find a candidate, one has to go through a series of tools. And when does a doctor or dentist have time to at least set up those tools, understand those tools, and then find the right candidate? Would we expect the doctors to do their job, or would we expect the doctors to make sure that, you set up the systems to find the right candidate? And they're losing the business, they're losing time and efforts. And while finding the candidates, that's also a even story, because a horrible story in this case, because the candidates are not much available, as I understood. And I heard a lot of stories about how dental hygienists are being treated, and what kind of candidates can you get out in the market, and how candidates are also suffering finding the right practice. So again, in order to bridge this gap, we came up with a process of identifying, okay, what makes things better, and in order to make sure that this process should help, not be a troublemaker or an obligation for either dentists or the candidates. So that's where we are.
I love what you're talking about here, and you're talking about bridging the gap between the need, right, which is the client who is looking for qualified candidates, and then the candidates, which, they're looking for what they're looking for, a practice that matches the need that they have for whatever the checklist is, right? And for moving for whatever reason. And it could be a myriad of reasons, right? And this isn't my lane, so I'm not going to try to list those out. But that gap, and trying to marry that gap. I was just talking about this about a week and a half ago from the main stage of the American Academy of Dental Group Practices. And I was relating it to the patient experience in full arch, which is my lane, fixed full arch, and the gap between the need between the patients who are needing fixed full arch treatment therapy and the providers, of which there are a wealth of out there. And how do we bridge that gap between the two and bring it closer together? And there are some individuals who are trying to do better at that with an app, ironically. But there is so much of a need. There's so much information that's out there. And in this day and age, with the technology that we have, the easier we can make it to be able to bring two sides together where there's a need and there's a want, or a need on both sides, right? Provider and seeker of that information, and bring it together. It should be easier. And I just find that, especially in the dental space, I'm not sure why, but as much technology is leaping forward with intraoral scans and photogrammetry, and I could go right down the list, and 3D printing, and, right? All the toys that are out there that are super expensive and prohibitive cost-wise for some to implement, some of the simplest things seem to be missing. Would you all agree with that? And then what is this app specifically doing? So give a little taste for those that may be out there listening and saying, yeah, because I mean, we know what we've gone through, right? The great resignation, so difficult to find, whether it's hygienists or qualified dental assistants. Allison, you and I know, right? Because we've worked together for clients and you're great at what you do. So let's talk about that.
You know, when you post a job, let's just say you post a job on one of the job boards, right? And I mean, half the candidates are going to be unqualified. So we basically, half of those are unqualified. We basically are allowing the companies to be able to, and I don't know, I have to be careful with what I say. So we're allowing companies to match based on not just qualifications, but also their skills. We're aligning them based on 5 factors, and so then after that candidate matches directly with that company, then everything kind of happens in one place. So instead of having to hop out and hop on this, software and then click on this tab and then click on this and this and this and this, it's all just there in the app, and it's super streamlined and super simple. And I personally can't wait to start using it. So Dentele Group is going to be the number one customer. So no, it's pretty cool though. It's pretty cool. So,
and I think to add to Allison's statement too, one of the big things that we saw was an issue, and we kind of paralleled this with clinical dentistry, would be user experience, right? So you want to go to the dentist and you want to have an experience. You don't just want to get a root canal, you want something more. And so in that recruitment space, the app that we developed, we kind of wanted that something more, not just find me a job, find me a candidate. We actually wanted to make it semi-enjoyable in a space where it's complicated. So that's kind of the backbone also of the app.
Well, and that's where adoption happens, right? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Alice. I was just going to say that's where adoption happens, really, is the patient experience, right? And that's everything that's in social media, whether you look at any of the meta platforms, with Instagram and the stories. Are you meeting people where they're at? They're going through stories, click, 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 click. How much attention span do people have? And then it's also, how do they feel about the platform? How does it look? How is it responding to them? I know for myself, like Facebook is kind of like, ugh. So with my company, I kind of have to have the Facebook page, but the Instagram is kind of like, okay, that's pretty good. But LinkedIn is where I live because it speaks more to where I'm at with my business and where I'm interacting with other industry partners. And it's where, I think it's Allison, I think that's where you and I actually met like a while ago. Somehow we were interacting in the same circles with the same people and, going to a lot of dental conferences. So, what is the platform and what is the experience that the individual's having is going to speak to them based on their needs. And same with candidates. I was just, at that conference I was talking about, I'm at a lot of conferences and really digesting a lot of information. And it depends on when you look at, well, are they Gen X, Gen Y? Are they baby boomers? And how are we responding to the way that they're going to receive the information and interact with on the candidate side? And then you have to look at on the hiring side as well, like how are they promoting and presenting on their side as well? And is it, one thing that I learned, and Allison and I were laughing about this, I don't know if it was more haha funny or more ironic funny when you're dealing with, doctors who may not know like the 7 deadly sin categories that you don't ask because you can't ask. I learned it, 15 years ago when I was the president of my church congregation. It's like, yeah, you can't ask that. You can't say that, right? You can't ask them where they live. You can ask them, are they able to, fulfill the job duties, with where they are. You have to be super careful because you don't want to like violate these things, and you don't know until you know. So that whole patient experience, it's not just patient facing, and it's the client experience, it's the candidate experience. Everything is experiential these days, and I think sometimes we forget that because it's devices that are in our face, and technology, as impersonal as it is, to be able to make it more personal and create that experience is really the ones that make it. I think, I don't know, I'm going to throw that over to Ranjith, because you talked about the 3 companies that weren't successful and the 2 that were. Did you find that with the different companies about the experience, the user experience playing a factor in those companies and the success or failure?
Yes, I mean, I can't stress this enough because the last company that I came out, it is a success, but there we have developed a game development platform. For game development, the latency is the key. So we had to go down deeper, and we spent crazy amount of money in order to get that experience for any game developer that is using our platform. So again, that's one side of the experience, right? The experience on the product, but then the whole journey is in itself an experience. So once a user comes into the product, again, there's a support thing. There is something that they feel like, okay, this is what I wanted. And that is also something that we want to get through this. And to your question, yes, experience plays an important role, both for us as a team and also for the customers who are using our product. And if we can give the good experience between the team, and I can definitely say that will reflect onto the product and that will reflect onto the customers.
And what was really cool, like, you always say, like, or I don't know, maybe I always said it, but I've always said, like, ooh, it'd be so cool to have an app, or I want to make an app for this. And so, like, when we were first kind of just throwing ideas around, we literally were making lists of, like, what are the biggest complaints from the candidate side? What are the biggest complaints from the client side? And we tried to do our best to fix those things, to alleviate those issues. I mean, candidates are complaining about ghosting. Well, they're not going to be ghosted on our app. They're complaining about being bombarded with, messages and calls and that kind of thing. They're not going to be bombarded. It's all just right there. And, from the company side, the biggest complaint is that they can't find qualified candidates. And so we're fixing that too. So we're just fixing the entire industry.
I love all the fixing, right? It's like it's like your great accent you got, Allison. It's all the fixins too. You got to have all the fixins. All right, team. Well, this is the part of the program that all of my guests play. It's a little something called What the Sleuth is Going On? It's 3 rapid fire questions. And since Allison's already played, she can't play. And I've got 3 of the others of you. So I'm just going to randomly pick one of you to answer one of each of the questions. It's the first thing that comes to mind. Are you all ready to play?
Yes.
Maybe.
Okay. And I'm not giving the doctor the first question because that's too easy. Okay, so Ranjith, you're going to get the first question. Are you ready? Question number 1. Ranjith, what's the worst bad breath you've ever encountered?
Yeah, I went for trekking and we didn't had I forgot my paste and brush, and I went along for 5 days.
Oh.
So and it was in Norway. It's called Odda, if you know. So we were camping and we were going. I mean, of course, I just did a basic hygiene, but that doesn't help, right?
Just kidding.
I like it. I've got him back on the program. I don't care if it's got nothing to do with dental. I like him. Allison, he's a keeper. Okay. Question number 2. Jared, if you could change one thing about your smile, what would it be?
Well, I definitely have gap teeth, so I guess that's a pretty big part there. So I've been meaning to get braces for a while.
So does Madonna.
Oh, okay.
And Michael Strahan.
Fair.
All right. And Ashley, you know you're getting question number 3. It's coming at you. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. If you could go back and be the inventor of any dental product, no, you can't choose your own. Which one would you choose and why?
Oh, good question. What would I choose? I'd probably choose the microscope for endo. I think it was a total absolute game changer in the way that we treat patients. And now we can actually see what we're doing, which is revolutionary considering for the last 20 plus years we weren't able to really see. So I think the operating microscope really would be awesome.
I love it. You have an endodontist on and she talks about the endo microscope. I mean, that's like an easy layup. I love it. All right, team. So in the last few minutes, to respect your time and all my listening audience, because a lot of them do like a 30-minute run and I want to keep it to 30 minutes. Is there anything I haven't asked, or what I really want to know too is when is the app going to launch? Give us some more details, or how can they find out more about using this platform? Because it sounds pretty amazing.
So we're in beta testing right now, and we're hoping to fully launch in a couple months. They can go to omnihire.app. So that's OMNIHIRE.app. And on there we have a like a sign up form, or be the first to know form, and they can sign up and receive updates and that kind of thing if they want to do that, or they can just reach out to any of us. So yeah.
Fantastic. How exciting. Thank you so much to the entire team. So Allison Norris with the Dentele Group, Dr. Ashley Milstein, Ranjith, who you've been like just such a pleasure with your answers. They've been so much fun. And Jared Davidson, I'm glad that they found you on the side of the road in Thailand and brought you onto the team to develop, because you've been amazing as well. Thank you so much, the team at Omnihire. Go to omnihire.app to learn more about their product they're getting ready to launch that's in beta testing. Thank you to all of you for being a guest on the Two Sleuth podcast.